This meeting is being recorded. Well, hi, everybody. It's weird to do this over the internet. I realize I haven't done one of these before. So bear with me a little bit. It's a new experience. But a couple of years ago, I saw a presentation on a thing called Binder. And the reason that I thought about it again is fairly recently, Do It announced that they have a hosted R service that does something kind of similar. The basic idea of both of these things is they let you share not just data or code with somebody, but an entire analysis pathway. So other people than you can run code and see exactly what you've done and modify things and try things themselves. Oh God. So, if you want to share code, it's fairly easy to do that now. Like there are pretty well-defined ways to do this. Similar to sharing data, you can email stuff, you can put stuff on OSF, if it's literally, you can put it on GitHub, you can just put it on our web server. But what does it really look like? What does it mean to share an analysis? Like something that somebody else can run, and it's like, this is code. It's R, it's Python, it's something that you can't just put on a web page and have other people modify, except you can now. So why would you want to do something like this? Maybe you're working with a statistician or your advisor. I'm sorry, I'm trying to, yeah, I know, sit. You're trying to get help. Maybe you have an error and you want to say like, hey, how can I fix this error with somebody who is an expert? You could even maybe send something like this to the author of an R library you're using. It's like, hey, I have this binder. Here's exactly what I'm doing, and here's where the error is, which is basically impossible right now unless you send somebody a screenshot, which is totally different. If you're writing a paper, maybe you want to share this with the other people you're writing with. So you can say like, hey, here is this figure and the data I'm using and the code to make it all together. And if people have questions about that, like, hey, when I exclude this point, how does that change your correlation? You can do that. You might want to, in the future, when you're publishing a paper, just share the code that generates the figures as supplemental material. And while this is one of those more like blue sky ideas, someday it would be really cool to take some of our analyses and use them as like a public communication. We're talking about this as how we do affective neuroscience with lay public people. And writing that content is really hard. Thinking about how that'll land with lay audiences is really difficult. But I think that there is some real potential to demystify what we're doing here and really show the world how we're making the sausage, basically. So if you want to do this now, you'd share your code, one of the ways you share code. You'd share your data, one of the ways you share data. You'd somehow get the person you're sharing with to install all the packages that you're using. If it's someone like Jeanette working at CHM, when she was, that's pretty easy. If it's somebody who's not at CHM, that's probably a much harder thing to do. Then once they've done that, you have to get them to run your script, which hopefully works out. In my experience, stuff like this is kind of fraught, and there usually are a bunch of problems and a lot of back and forth and things. It'd be a lot nicer if you could do something like just send somebody a link, like a thing they can click on that will get you an analysis. So see what happens when I click this. I'm going to click it. So this is not the fastest thing to do, but again, it's setting up an environment for you to run an entire analysis on. So don't expect super speed. So I can go here, new RStudio, and this literally just pulls up an entire instance of RStudio in a web browser.
What?
And I can see this little test script I've run. It loads ggplot, and I will source this with echo, and it will print some output, and run a little plot for me. This is just like the test ggplot thing. I'm not going to go into how to do analyses because every person in this room is better at analysis than I am. So there's that.
Except me.
Except Dan. Dan is also terrible at analysis.
So wait, I'm
yes.
totally confused here. I'm sorry to interrupt, Nate. But,
no, totally.
I mean, we're running, this is like some sort of virtual machine running on a server somewhere. Who the hell is paying for all this?
This is funded through a bunch of partner organizations and grant funding. This has always been intended to be like a temporary thing. They were going to close down in a few months, and then they kept getting more funding and more people using it, more people hosting instances. So nothing here is, guaranteed to stick around for the rest of your life, but it's also not going away tomorrow.
Are there space limits or HIPAA issues or things like that?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll get into that a little bit more, but you don't have a very big computer. You're not going to run an imaging analysis on this. Even if you're running really big, what do you call it? The thing, combinatorial models, like that stuff might fail. You can't have any machine last for more than, I think, 12 hours. You have fairly strict limits on memory and disk space. This is for when you've pre-processed your data and you're making plots, really, or other things that are like that. As far as HIPAA goes, yeah, you're putting your data on somebody else's computer that you don't control. So don't do anything that would violate HIPAA or your IRB. Hopefully you have language in your IRB that says, hey, I can share de-identified data. And if you do, that's, share de-identified data, and you should be fine. You have to be careful about identifiers. I expect that everybody here in this room is careful and an adult and will get help if they have questions, but yeah. But yes, this is literally just a thing I can print. What does that do? That shows a little data table, and you can see things the way you can see things in R, which I'm not very expert at, so I'm not going to do too much of it. So present. Is this working? Goodness. So what's going on in the back end here? As John mentioned, this is really starting a virtual machine on another computer. So first, the binder service looks, you paste a thing.
I'm actually not getting a screen update. Can other people see the presentation or just the RStudio?
A screen update.
Wait, yep. It's not working?
Maybe not.
Try unsharing and resharing, maybe.
Jeez. Share. Any luck?
No, back to the black screen.
It's spinning.
I blame the cat.
Great. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect once more real quick.
Sounds good. While he's gone, I will briefly talk about the thing that Emily and Andrew and I saw that Doit is piloting. It's a little bit different than this because you can publish Shiny apps, which are kind of like self-contained web apps, and it's a little more polished because it's a commercial provided thing. So you can kind of, the nice thing about that is you can publish a report that is, the person on the other end doesn't need to know R. They don't see the code. They just see the plots or the whatever data you want them to see. And then you can give them variables to change what they are seeing or experiment with different parts of the data. And then you can collaborate with other people to publish your various RStudio. It's basically just taking R Markdown and making it more convenient. And the Shiny side of it is just making the R Markdown interactive. Does that about cover it, I think? And the promising bit would be that Doit would be taking care of this thing. You would just log in with NetID and it's fully secured. and eventually maybe even for HIPAA data would be usable.
So they have a timeline on this, do you think? Or
No, not to my knowledge. Is Nate back?
I'm back.
yeah.
And
Well,
Dan,
then
when you say fully secure, do you mean behind UW firewall? What do you mean by fully secure?
That's complex, but what I mean is all the parts of the pipeline will be authenticated by DoIT as being HIPAA compliant. So even though some of the data is going out to Amazon Web Services or whatever the heck, it will be HIPAA compliant all the way to there and including that. That's what they're investigating. There's no promise at this time. Right now, we're going to use it as kind of the same way as this binder tool, where we're just going to use.
Gotcha. So that's DoIT's goal, but it's not there yet.
Yes.
Sorry for the dumb question. What's DoIT?
DoIT is the UW's Department of Information Technology, which
DoIT. Oh, got it. I was hearing as DUET, and I was not
Oh
getting it.
yeah,
Got
yeah,
it,
yeah.
got it.
Not a dumb question at all, actually.
Not
Right.
at all. And we don't use many of their services. They provide a lot of cloud services and other things, but
Right.
maybe this is one that we will start using.
Sometimes DoIT is a bit like Suet.
Okay, we can see again, Nate.
You can see again, I'm not going to do anything
Yay.
that makes it go full screen, which I think is what's killing it. So hi, I came back. What am I talking about here? Yes, so what you do to use Binder is you go to mybinder.org and you paste in the URL for your GitHub repository. So you put your data and your code up on GitHub, presumably, whatever you want to do. You paste it in here, boop, and it looks at this URL and says, I'm going to look here for the code. So it looks at that URL you paste in and it looks to find your code. Then it starts a computer for you somewhere in the cloud, like some actual virtual machine spins up and starts working just for you. This costs somebody real money, but they don't pass that charge along to you, which is great.
Yay. I'm not seeing updates, Nate.
Hmm?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing updates on the screen at all.
Not
Same.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Why
We're
don't
still
people?
on the binder screen.
Let me stop share and start share one more time, but it's not going to work.
So I can say that my package from Amazon is 6 stops away, and I'm watching it on the map at the same time. This is very exciting. I'm living in the future over here. So
You'd probably just see a loading screen of some type.
Yeah, it's spinning.
Nate, would it work for me to share your slides on my screen? And
Sure. Yeah. Let's.
oh yeah, that's a good idea.
You, my friend,
what's its disabled host?
you're a co-host now.
Heck yeah.
Do not abuse your power.
I'll try not to. Do I have anything embarrassing that I was looking at CNN.
That is embarrassing.
Move you over here. What's going on?
What's going on? Just a couple more.
Where you want me?
Yeah.
Go 2 more. Perfect. And so, yeah, the next thing you wonder is like, how does it know that I want R and what version of R or Python? And you can run Julia or a variety of other languages, like even Octave, which is MATLAB-like, I believe. It looks for a magic file called runtime.txt, which contains like R dash some date. So R 2020 12/15. And that says run the version of R and its libraries from today. So in 5 years, it should still pull that same version of R down and load those same libraries, which is useful for the future when libraries change. It'll also run a file called install.r to install any of the libraries that it has listed there. So for example, I just put like install.packages, ggplot2. But if you want all of tidyverse, you can get that. I mean, Elmer, anything you want, really, it'll install.
Does it know to use packages from that date as well?
It, I believe, does.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you even maybe explicitly specify that? It seems like-
I believe install packages will let you specify a version, which if you really want like the ultimate in forward thinking compatibility, do specify versions of things. You know, if you're trying to package something up for posterity, that's good practice anyhow. You know, if you're in the Python world, there's a file called requirements.txt, which is basically install.r, except the syntax is a little bit different. Go on to the next.
Nate,
Yeah.
Feel free to like not answer this question if it's not a helpful question, but are there, I know that there are issues with certain kinds of processes that are different on different operating systems if you're trying to replicate exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
Is there an issue with that sort of thing in this case, and what kinds of things might be an issue?
So that is actually a really good question. And there isn't a big picture solution to that in the whole world. You are more likely, in setting this up, you are more likely to get a binder that will run the same for everyone from now until a long time from now than you are running stuff on your own computer and shipping that code to somebody else. Because both of them run on similar-ish environment on Binder. But like time is long and versions of virtual machines and the hardware they run on might change. Those should be relatively small problems compared to like switching from a Mac to Windows to Linux, but they're not guaranteed to be nothing. And especially for like iterative algorithms that rely on like floating point numbers, I think of like mixed model stuff or things like that. It could be an issue. Yeah, but there's no way around that stuff. So getting back to this, so the first thing that'll happen, so after the first time you run one of these, it's going to take 15 minutes maybe to install all the things for your computer. It's building what's called an image that other people can then use. Every time your repository changes, Binder says, oh, I have a new version of the repository here. I better build a new image for that, which can be kind of annoying. I'm going to see if I'm going to let my kids make noise.
We can hear you fine.
Yep.
Next slide, Andrew, if you would. And then the last thing it does is launch an environment called Jupyter, which people tend to think of as a Python thing, but it really isn't. It is an interface to run R or Python or any one of a number of different things. So here's where I was going to do a little demo of that. Actually, would you click on that link? See what happens here. Nice. And so here you can see I have my little runtime text file and my install R file. And if you click on that, you can just see exactly how this thing all works.
There's your GitHub. I mean, ggplot.
Plot. And runtime says run R from today.
That's so cool.
That's like nothing. That's
So
cool.
really, getting started with this is way easier than I thought it would be.
It's
Even
cool.
having seen it done before.
Yeah, this is way simpler than Vagrant and things like that.
Right, this just takes all of that stuff and hides it really well.
Now, Nate, did you have to go ahead and, I mean, I know they're one line long, but did you have to handwrite those, or was there something that would auto-generate those for you?
I hand wrote these just so I would have the experience doing that. For R, there is something called Hole Punch, which I have not experimented with because I'm not that R savvy. It is designed to take like an R Markdown file and make it into a binder ready thing. So it sees what libraries you're using and makes an install R file for it. And it sets up an environment file or a runtime text file and maybe some other things. But again, I'm not experienced enough with R to make that work easily.
So if you had a CSV that you were running, you just throw it in this directory also, and then that's
Yeah,
where data
there are
comes.
actually a bunch of ways to do this. If you want to actually copy the URL for this and go to mybinder.org. And I'll just paste that in that first little box and hit launch. And this will take, I don't know, like 30 seconds probably. The second time you do it, it's way fast. Think.
Launching.
There you go. And so you can either put your CSV file in your repository if you want. In here, you can see up on the upper right, there's an upload button. You could upload a CSV file. That will make that be like a thing that won't live with your project forever. It'll go away as soon as this machine is closed down, which happens after 10 minutes of inactivity. So that's another way to do it. You can do you can launch RStudio or Shiny. So if you want to do Shiny stuff, that's also available here. I don't have much experience with it, so.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what there is in one of these things at a basic level.
This is really cool.
One thing you can't do right now, at least, is collaborate with somebody in real time. So you can't send two people into the same environment, which is a little bit of a pity, especially if you're trying to get help with something. And there you go. Hello.r is not a special name at all. So that's just what I called the thing.
It works.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Sweet.
All right. So back in slides land, if you would.
Gladly.
Let's go to some more slides. Yes, concerns. We brought up some of these already. The first one is, this is all public. So don't share stuff you don't want to share. Like if you put identifying data out there, that's a reportable event. It's bad. Code I'd be a lot less worried about. Cool. Yep, this is cool. Go on next. What else is... Yes, so sometimes you'll have a thing where you're running Amazon services or something, or you want to download a file from a password-protected website. Don't ever put those in your GitHub thing and make that public. People watch for that stuff via some nefarious means that I don't even know how it works. And we'll go from somebody putting like an Amazon access key to having a $10,000 Amazon Web Services bill in minutes. So that is a big rake. Whenever you're sharing code or anything, like that's a big rake you can trip on real easily. So watch out for that one. Computer's a baby, so that's fine. It's also like there's no save your work on Binder. This is both a curse and a blessing in a way. Like if you ever get screwed up, yeah, just close your browser tab and start a new one. But there's also no way to save this stuff and download it to your computer easily or put it back up in GitHub from here. Unless you want to do some advanced things that I'm not going to talk about at all.
Don't do that.
I mean, you could, but that's like advanced bindering.
So I'm a little confused, Nate. So I mean, it seems like you've got all your key stuff in GitHub already. So what would you want to save from your binder that's not already there?
You are bumming around in RStudio and you got your plot to look just like you want it to look.
Okay.
I'm just going to save my file and close my browser window. It's like, nope, that's gone. Copy that out and put it in your other text editor. Put it on RStudio on your computer. And then, you know, just a general thing, like just putting one of these up and sending a link to somebody, like if it doesn't explain what it is and how everything works and what your data means, people are going to be totally lost. This is just an issue of communication in general. Like you can't just send somebody a blob of code and CSV file and say like, here you go, it's all going to make sense to you. And putting it on the web doesn't make that any easier. Using R Markdown and the Jupyter Notebook thing, like you can mix documentation and code in a really elegant way there. And so do that. So some suggestions if you're going to go down this road. As you noted, Andrew, you don't need to put your code, your data in your repository. You can, but you can put stuff up on our website. You could email it to somebody and say like, hey, just upload this thing. When you get there, if you don't want to share any of your data in a way that is as long-lasting as a GitHub repository, which there are good reasons to not sometimes.
Isn't that sort of risky if you, you know, you share it and someone does a write.csv into it?
If you share and somebody writes a CSV file, if they do it on Binder, that's just going to be there for the length of that machine, so it'll go away.
No, what I meant is we're reading this file, which is on brainimaging.basement.bisq, and someone takes the same file name and does a write on top of that.
Oh, they can't do that. That just won't work.
Oh, okay.
Unless they have, I don't know if it'll work in any way, but they'd certainly need to be able to log in as you. So you can, I can send you a direction on how to do this, or it's on our wiki too. You can put files up on your, a special directory in your home directory and just put them on the web.
And those are read-only. Yeah,
And
there's
those are
no
read-only.
there's no HTTP put for those.
Thanks.
Yep. You know, if you want to do this, but you're like, oh, I don't want the world to see my ugly, gross code, you don't have to leave it up there forever. You know, not every event of data sharing or code sharing is a promise to do this for the rest of your life or until the end of the universe, whichever comes first. Hopefully not the end of the universe, I guess. So you can just delete a repository off GitHub if you get tired of it being there. You know, this goes back to kind of the communications aspect of things. Uploading, say, the entire NCAM3 master file is complete madness because there's thousands of variables. You know, probably weed stuff down to potentially relevant variables. No, not every variable. Maybe you want to say like, I'm going to let people covary for age, you know, even though I didn't, and leave that in there then. But you know, maybe you don't want your behavioral analysis to let people covary for right insular volume. Maybe, yeah. One thing I see people do in RStudio a lot is they have like their R file or their R Markdown file. They're like, I'm going to copy over these 5 lines and run them. And then I'm going to go down here, copy over these 10 lines and run those. And then I'm going to go back up and run these lines in the middle. That can work okay if you're doing something exploratory by yourself. If you're trying to share that workflow with somebody else, it's not going to make any sense to anybody else in the world.
Can I jump in here real quick? Relatedly, don't use the RStudio workspace, which by default saves things in your local state so that your data stays between sessions. Don't rely on that because it's just not going to work here.
Yeah, it seems like in general, a much better plan is to put lines at the top of your script to load the data you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and Jupyter Notebooks have the same conceptual problem where they let you kind of jump around and the state kind of carries in this weird way. Don't do that when you're sharing something. So, and I can't speak for Dan or anybody else, but I am super excited to help you with stuff like this. Like if you want to try this stuff, I think it's neat, and I'd really like to help anybody who is interested try this out. So that's what I have for this.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. This is really cool.
Yeah, this is super great. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, thank you. Can't wait to use it.
Yeah, it's easier than I feared.
Anybody have any questions for Nate or whatever?
So I've
I
just been
did see
kind of-
a demo somewhere of black holes and gravitational waves and stuff like that
Yeah.
on Binder. So it's very impressive stuff. So people are doing that for public communication as well.
Yeah, the public communications around that particular thing, but this was downloading data from the gravitational wave detectors, running some processing on it, and then actually, I don't know if anybody heard that, like, here's the sound it makes when black holes merge. Stuff that was over the news a few years ago, but it was the code to generate that sound. That was great. You know, and there was certainly a lot of pre-processing that got left out of the details there, because downloading data from space is going to be more than, it's big. Yeah.
That's cool though.
So I got to say, you don't want to do this when you're in a hurry. So I'm kind of in the background. I've just been doing this super simple thing that just has a couple of text files and images in it.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe a couple 100K total. And it's, you know, it just now finished doing the build and push and everything. And I'm trying to launch it now. And yeah, it's, so if it's urgent, this is not something you want to do.
Yeah, if you're doing this if you're doing this a lot, one thing you'll get really frustrated with is how long it takes to build your image, because that takes like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of things you can do about that we can talk about. They're too complicated for this, but you can store just your, what's the runtime text? You can have just your runtime text file as part of your repository, and then have a little line that just loads code from another Git repository into your thing and installs that. So the big thing where it compiles a bunch of stuff only happens once. And again, like, I looked at that and I said, oh, that sounds like too much work. I don't want to do that. But if you're doing this really seriously, yeah, you might want to look at that someday. Really what I would do though is just do your development locally, get everything running the way you want it on your computer, and then take the parts of that you want to share and put that up where you're pretty convinced it's already going to work. And so you don't have to do that a lot of times.
It's running. It's working. Oh my God. I'm excited. I can look at an image. I can read my README file. Holy smokes. All running in a virtual machine somewhere.
Weird magic.
Yay.
So yeah.
Sharing analyses. Sweet.
Yeah. And other stuff too. You can use this for all kinds of things, it seems like.
I mean, yeah, anything, really, it could be any code.
Well, cool. Thanks for running us through it, Nate. That is awesome.
It is a pleasure.
Thank you.
And speaking of shared code, Dan Fitch, I think you should share it in the chat, the link to that really awesome blob opera thing.